And good Saturday morning. Thank you for joining us here on our app, online, and on Facebook. We're going to give a rundown on the latest from the National Hurricane Center. As of 10 a.m., we've got some changes here to talk about, and you can notice just a mess going on with both of our cones. We'll break them each down because I know this is kind of confusing. Let's start with Tropical Storm Marco because it is surprises this morning. We'll be honest, it is a lot stronger than it was forecasted. Notice winds 65 miles per hour. It is moving northwest, still at about 12 miles per hour, and it's not the most organized, but it is certainly more organized than it was yesterday. It is strengthened pretty quickly because we have a small vortex that has developed, and you get storms around that and they can ramp up pretty quickly, which is exactly what has happened this morning. That's also changed the forecast a bit. Notice we have this becoming a hurricane later on today. It would be Hurricane Marco getting into the Gulf later tonight, by Sunday morning here, by Sunday evening here, and then notice it's making that northwest movement. Here's the biggest change. Notice it is a bit further towards the east, meaning getting closer to the Louisiana coast as we go through Monday. Now, this part of the forecast where you see it start to turn is because we have it forecasted to weaken some as it gets closer to Texas by Wednesday morning. Now, this part of the forecast, just like we've been saying over and over again, is still very, very uncertain because we will have to follow this closely. With it being a small vortex, a small storm that can ramp up quickly, weaken quickly, that can certainly have implications and a change in the track. So we're not going to quit watching this until it is clear that it is actually turning. So Hurricane Marco possible in the Gulf of Mexico by tonight, and going into Sunday rather. By Monday, that's when we'll start to feel most of the effects from the system here in southeast Louisiana. But you can imagine, even if it does start to make that turn, we're still on the right side. So we're going to get rain, maybe some minor coastal flooding depending on how close it gets, and then of course how close it gets the winds. That will determine how strong the winds are along the coastal area. So watching Marco very, very closely. Could start to see some rainfall from that by Sunday night, mainly a Monday event though, and then by Tuesday, Wednesday it could be heading towards the west. Let's talk about Laura. Laura is out in the right next to Puerto Rico right here. Here's the Dominican Republic. Not the most organized system. Look how fast it's moving, 18 miles per hour. So it's still got some dry air. It's moving fast. It's not going to organize much. We don't think it is, as it moves along the island chain. So it'll be interacting with the islands through the weekend. By Monday morning, getting closer to Florida Straits. Here's Key West, and then past Cuba into the Gulf of Mexico by late Monday into early Tuesday. Now, so we don't expect much strengthening here. Once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, it is going to be in an environment that is favorable for strengthening. So for now, we have a hurricane coming into the Gulf by Tuesday, riding up towards the northwest, starts to make that westerly to northwesterly turn by Wednesday, making landfall somewhere from, let's say, Houston to Mobile. There's still a lot of uncertainty with the exact track because the ridging that's building in could still steer this thing a bit further towards the west, or it may go a little bit further towards the east. So overall message here is, yes, we could feel impacts from two hurricanes here in South Louisiana within about 2 days. Unbelievable, right? So you can see there, that'll travel towards the northwest. Depending on the exact track will determine our impacts here in South Louisiana and South Mississippi. I want to show you some of the scenarios here with the current forecast because since there's so much uncertainty, there's still kind of a lot on the table that could happen. We'll go with the middle of the cone, the current forecast right now. This would be the roughest weather for southeast Louisiana, from Baton Rouge to New Orleans to South Mississippi, because we're near the center. We would be near the center, and we would be on the east side of the center. So here's what we would think if this played out. We would have very heavy rainfall. The flooding potential would be there. Coastal flooding, that means storm surge. Storm surge will be an issue with this track. Winds, of course, would be an issue with this track closer to the center of it. And then tornadoes, can't rule that out, especially in those outer bands, depending on where they track. Now, if this goes further west, this is a possibility that we see more of a westerly track towards Houston, maybe Lake Charles, Lafayette. We would still be on the east side. We would still feel a lot of the moisture and rainfall from Laura, but everything else would be a little bit lower. So rain would be our main concern here. We would have some coastal flooding with strong onshore flow. The winds would be minor, and maybe a tornado threat here and there. Now, the best case scenario for Laura would be for it to go up towards Mobile or Florida Panhandle. Of course, we would be on the west side in South Mississippi and southeast Louisiana. That means rainfall chances or amounts would be lower. The coastal flooding storm surge threat would be lower, along with winds, and the tornado threat will be lower as well. So this is what we want to happen, at least for us in southeast Louisiana. We do not want it going much further east than that, because then that puts us kind of at the brunt of it all. Now, rainfall seems like something that is pretty much a guarantee at this point. We'll have two tropical systems, could very easily be on the east side of both of them, meaning that is going to be our greatest concern at the moment. You can see rainfall totals, kind of a huge swath. This is likely going to change some, but just to give you an idea, could be dealing with maybe 5, 7+ inches depending on where they track, things like that. So we'll have to watch for heavy rainfall. That starts late Sunday and could go all the way through Thursday, really. So a very wet start to the week, and the middle of the work week's looking wet as well. We need to watch for those winds. Now with the new forecast, the wind threat is going up because we have two hurricanes nearby, right? So you can see here, this is tropical storm force winds. We're talking winds 39 miles per hour or greater, could impact portions of South Louisiana as we go into Monday, as this would be Marco, makes its way across the region. Now to give you an idea of kind of a guesstimate on when the winds could start to pick up, these are the most likely times that the tropical storm force winds would arrive. Notice by Sunday night off the coast, by a couple hundred miles or so. By Monday morning, though, we start to see some of those tropical storm force winds possible along the coastal areas and then creeping up over the entire area, possibly as we go throughout your Monday. And it just depends on really how close the center gets, how strong it is, how strong Marco is once it gets closer to the coast. So that's Marco. Let's talk about Laura, because the winds are going to be a little bit delayed with Laura as it's moving a little slower. So what you have here is tropical storm force winds possible, 100 miles or so off the mouth of the river by Tuesday night. Wednesday, though, would be the primary time frame for Laura's wind. So Monday for Marco, Wednesday for Laura, if they maintain their same speed with what we're thinking. So within about 48 hours, you could have two different effects, or the effects from two different systems. So to give you an idea, we're pretty good today. If you're doing preparations, you should be preparing. Get the outside things done, rain gutters, things like that. Do it today. Tomorrow, rain chances will increase, especially later in the day. Monday's looking pretty wet with Marco to the south. Tuesday's looking pretty wet with all that deep tropical moisture, and then possibly even more effects, hurricane effects, are possible by Wednesday with Laura. So those are the three main days, and then it looks like we'll even see some rain and tropical moisture lingering as we go into portions of the back end of the week. Now, I also want to show you some of our models and our steering currents with this thing, and what we're going to be really watching as we go ahead in time here. This is looking at the moisture in the atmosphere. So you've got, and what's steering everything right now. So you've got two prominent features doing everything. You've got the Bermuda High, which is steering Laura to the west, but you've got this deep trough digging it over the Gulf of Mexico, and that's what's pulling Marco to the north. So that's what's streaming all this moisture to the north along with the storm right now. Now what's going to happen is this trough will start to break down, it'll weaken, it'll lift up, and this ridge will start to build in, which will keep Marco more on a northwesterly track. So it'll start to feel more northwest later in tomorrow and going into Monday. So that trough continues to lift up. Now, as Marco gets to this position, people have been asking, why is it going to turn? Well, it's got to weaken to turn. If it remains a strong hurricane, it might not turn that much. So if it continues to weaken like we expect because of this dry air and wind shear increasing, it will start to make more of a westerly turn. This ridge will build in. There's Marco going into Texas by Tuesday and Wednesday, but notice here comes Laura right behind it, getting into the Gulf of Mexico by Monday, late Monday into Tuesday morning. It's going to be riding around this periphery, or the edge of this high pressure, and as this high pressure and ridge gets stronger, it's going to push Laura more towards the west. So how strong this ridge is going to determine if it goes towards Houston, if it goes towards New Orleans, if it goes towards Mobile. It all depends on how strong the ridge is, and the intensity of the storm is going to play a role as well. But one thing you notice here, look at all these blues. That's that deep tropical moisture that's going to be over us, really regardless of the track of these things. So that's why rainfall seems like more of a guarantee at this point in the forecast. So looking at pretty good conditions today, if you're going to do any preparations, things like that. And then as we go into tomorrow, rain chances will start to steadily go up. So about a 30% chance of rain today. And then there it is, a 30% to 50% chance later tomorrow afternoon. That goes up to 60, 70, and we'll bump it up as we go into Monday. Monday as well. So we'll be watching this very, very closely. There's still a lot of uncertainties with the entire forecast and kind of how it's going to evolve, because you've also got two storms interacting with each other, and it's not very often that we're dealing with that. So we've got, we're trying to figure out what these ridges are going to do, what these troughs are going to do, but also how these two storms are going to interact with each other. And I know this track, I want to show you this because it looks like they're going to merge, right? Well, if you look at the dates, this is where Laura could be on Wednesday. This is where Marco could be on Wednesday. So you've got a pretty big distance there. So Marco will come in first, and then Laura will come in a day and a half or so behind Marco. Laura will come in behind Marco about a day and a half to 2 days or so. So that's what we're looking at with that. One thing I want to leave you with is this. I talked about it on the news this morning, and it's what effects do these storms have on each other? And it is something that's been studied, and it is a meteorological phenomenon. We've seen it many, many times with tropical systems, not in the Gulf of Mexico, but out in the Pacific usually is where it happens. But so when you get two systems together, it interacts, and it's something known as the Fujiwhara effect. That is named after a Japanese meteorologist. He discovered it about 100 years ago. I think it was around 1920 to 1921. So what happens when you get two lows or two cyclones close together? They do start to interact with each other. Notice they get close, and if they're the same size, the same intensity, they'll start to dance around each other. It's very interesting. They'll create like a center circulation or a center point here, and they'll rotate around that center. Now, if the storms are different sizes, if they're different intensities, then it doesn't quite work this way. One of those storms, the weaker one, is going to get weakened and probably drawn into the circulation of the bigger storm. Now, you saw it combine there. Notice it did not get bigger. It didn't turn into a superstorm. It didn't turn into this massive perfect storm. So when they combine, if they do combine, it doesn't create a stronger hurricane. Usually sometimes it can even weaken it some. So that's what we're looking at with the Fujiwhara effect. Is that going to happen with these storms? It doesn't look very likely. I mean, it's still hard to say, but with them remaining at least a couple hundred miles apart, that's certainly close enough where they could feel the effects of each other. But we don't expect to see what I just showed you, where they're wrapping all the way around, coming up into it, and weakening. Of course, crazy things can happen, but it'll be interesting to see how they interact with each other. I think because the proximity to the coast and how they're moving in the Gulf of Mexico, we might not see as dramatic as what I showed you right there in that figure. So nonetheless, we need to follow Laura closely. We need to follow Marco closely. I'm not giving the all clear for anyone here in Southeast Louisiana from either one of them, because this forecast remains so uncertain because of intensity and land interaction, especially with Laura. So that does it for the 10 a.m. update. We'll get our next half update at 1 p.m. and then our next full update will be at 4 p.m. Alexandra Cranford will have more on that, and of course she'll be on later editions of the Eyewitness News. But for now, thanks for joining us.